you.
He doesn't have warning track power.
No, he probably got about, I used to joke with my friends when I was playing, if I didn't hit one out, dude, it doesn't matter because honestly, I only got about 14% of that baseball. Shohei probably got 14% of that baseball, and it got hit out the park. As we talk to Sean Cunningham, sports reporter for Fox 40. Sean, before we get into the Kings talk, come on, man. I'm sitting here. I got to watch Shohei hit a dinger. I'm going to lose my lunch, man. The Giants, Jung-Hoo Lee, okay, he's finally out here making his debut. I have to check in. I saw his first at bat, but haven't been able to see his second. How you doing, Sean? What are the Giants going to do this season, man?
Oh, man. First of all, good to be with you guys. I like that I can misery loves company. So as a fellow Giants fan, I can sit here and absolutely relate. Yeah, but it's also, hey, man, we're used to this. Like, Giants fans are used to – I mean, look, you haven't had power since Barry Bonds left the ballpark. And, you know, I like the Jorge Soler pickup. I like it a lot, but it's definitely like 15th on the list of guys that have passed you up because no Shohei, no Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. Obviously, the Carlos Correa thing happened last year. I mean, it's nasty. It's hard for whatever reason, the Giants just can't seem to land that big fish. And as much as I like Soler, he's not the big fish. He's not that whale. It's more like I don't know, tuna? I don't know.
Yeah. Something, a dolphin, maybe something like that. Talking to Sean Cunningham, sports reporter for Fox 40. Sean, we were both in the post-game presser last night, and when the question got asked to Coach Mike Brown about the Kings struggling against shorthanded teams, he essentially said he didn't think it was an issue, and he noted beating the Clippers without Paul George. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on what he had to say about it, and what are your thoughts about the Kings struggling against some of these shorthanded teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of their identity, like it or not. Like, this is a team that, you know, if they've shown the ability, I think it's kind of worn out, this thing that they could, this little slogan that you could probably put on a T-shirt that says they're good enough to beat anybody, but bad enough to lose to anybody on any given night. And anyone who's acting surprised by it just clearly hasn't watched the team, or they're just so locked into the roller coaster that is this season, where you're just really riding the ups and downs. You can lose to the Pistons one night. You can even have a bad showing against the Pistons in a game that you beat them. You lose to the Grizzlies and some of the dreck of the league. So the Hornets included, and certainly the Heat are not that. Last night, I'm going to be honest, guys. Last night's loss did not bother me at all, and maybe that's because I've got a couple ties to the Miami Heat team. A good buddy of mine is Rob Pimentel, who is a Sacramento former equipment manager for the Kings, long time back in the glory days, and he's now over in the Miami Heat side. And we talk about it all the time, man. Like 1 through 17 on their roster, going into even G League players, like they always attract the same type of player. They have a DNA makeup about that player that is just always consistent, and whether or not they've got their best players or the last players on the roster, you know what you're getting night in and night out. And certainly, they came out there, and I thought the Kings played an aggressive style, but it's frustrating when you can have a third quarter, 36-19 outscored in that period, and then it takes a 20-point deficit to where you're all of a sudden flipping a switch, upping a defensive intensity. And I disagreed with Fox. I mean, De'Aaron Fox talked about how, Keegan hit some shots and hurt his shot, and all of a sudden it's like people think we're playing better. And it's like, well, no, because you were forcing turnovers on that end too. Keegan Murray was a huge part of that, literally taking the ball a couple times away from the likes of Bam Adebayo. So I would push back there because I felt what they did defensively in that fourth quarter is what makes that game so much more frustrating, because you're like, man, if they could just do that for better part of 4 quarters, they'd be great. But again, I don't have a problem with last night. They won 3 of 4. I think that's the way to look at it from a broad picture. Certainly the defense is looking much better through this stretch, especially from the All-Star break. And, I think you're going on now. This is one of those barometer weeks because you can play the Clippers and look incredible. You can play the Heat and look rather average and have moments of greatness. And now you're going to go out on the road to a team that you've had some ownership over this season in the Denver Nuggets, and then you've got the first place T-Wolves. So to me, it's a nice barometer game, especially with all these teams in the West all huddled up.
Sean, I'm curious, you used the term roller coaster there. Just in general, how do you think fans and, I guess even us as media should approach the daily headache or struggle of doing the standings watch? I mean, we literally do a pocket watching, a standings watch segment here. Like, is it just not getting too high and not getting too low? Or what would be your advice, I guess, for us out here who are just clinging on every single day, and it seems like this thing is fluid every single day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's food for thought. I think certainly, I think it's worth paying attention to know where everyone else around you is. I think there's no harm in scoreboard watching and checking out the standings day in and day out, for sure, because as you see, and I like to say every year, it's like a week goes by in the NBA and you can miss a lot. I mean, it's just truly that way. But at the same time, this is, all athletes will tell you it's a day-to-day grind. It's so cliche, but it's very much true. And I like to, break up the season into little 10-game increments to see how they're playing rotationally and different things like that. But at the end of the day, it's easier to kind of to talk about a team through a 10-game span. And I to answer your question, I don't think there's any right answer. I think people just can't get too high or too low. And I know, De'Aaron Fox takes a lot of heat for sometimes being the guy that's almost treats wins and losses almost like water off a duck's back. And I think people want to see somebody kind of ride the wave with them a little bit more. And to me, I'm almost more, I find some of the more amusing moments in just how people handle wins and losses, because while on one hand, you have someone like De'Aaron Fox who can handle that water like a duck's back, off a duck's back, where you look at somebody else in that locker room, like maybe Malik Monk, who might be bothered by more wins and losses, particularly losses. He probably hates losing more than he likes winning. So it's a nice dynamic. Everyone's different. I don't think there's a right answer, and I don't think there's wrong. First of all, I'll never fault a fan. Like I might say, hey, take a step back, and maybe for someone's mental health, it might be better not to go on the roller coaster, but this is what they're invested in. So literally with their own money. So who am I to say?
Talking to Sean Cunningham, sports reporter for Fox 40. Yeah, Sean, to let you know what the vibes were like today, going to get Dwight Howard made an appearance at some point during the show. And speaking of, the reason that came up was because of, I don't know if you saw the words from Tim Legler after the Kings beat the Clippers, but Tim Legler talking about Sabonis's limitations and last night seeing the lack of rim protection. What are your thoughts on the idea that Sabonis is limited and how much the lack of rim protection might come back to bite the Kings?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly it's a thing that you saw kind of bear its head in the Warriors series last year, and I think people were really hoping that they'd add some length and some help for him, rim protecting help, and obviously they did with the likes of JaVale McGee, but I think the thought of JaVale McGee and the execution of JaVale McGee are two different things at this point in his career. So it's tough to go and just add rim protection, because you want to, I mean, if anyone watches this team, they want to be able to play guys that are impactful on both ends of the floor and not create somebody where, well, we don't have to, it's a mismatch problem. We can just leave that person and go and double team another. That's one of the beauty about what their starting five looks like. Even when Malik Monk comes off the bench, it's like you have to respect every single guy on the floor. And it was tough for them. And I think, people wanted to see more wholesale changes in terms of trying to build off the success that they had. But I'd argue one of the biggest things that they did this offseason was that really kind of limited them was extend Domantas Sabonis. So you don't do it all in just one offseason. You have moments throughout the year that you can build upon, but they were betting on the continuity. I don't think Tim Legler is wrong by any stretch. I think sometimes it gets blown out of proportion a little bit. I think there are some matchups where you can absolutely harass Domantas Sabonis, and in my opinion, it absolutely impacts and disrupts what they're trying to do offensively. And I think last night you saw that. You go zone again. I mean, they saw a zone back on the 31st of January when they lost to Miami, and it gave Sacramento fits. Mike Brown wasn't quick to adjust to it, and they did that in the fourth quarter. They adjusted to it, and they played fantastic, I thought, in the fourth quarter, but it just came up short. So when you attack Domas and you rough him up a little bit and you take away his ability to do what he does best, and that's get everybody involved, and even take away possibility of a scoring threat, the way they collapse the paint, it does work to the opposition's advantage. I don't know why more teams don't do it. I think if you're asking me, though, I think the Heat were maybe more equipped to do that with some of their length. You saw Kevin Love come off the bench. Jaime Jaquez was fantastic, and obviously Bam Adebayo is an all-star. They're a long physical team, and even when they're absence of three starters, it was disruptive. So to see how that is going forward, I think it just comes down to what team you play, and especially in the playoffs, you look. That's one of the reasons why the Pelicans have been so successful against the Kings this season, is disrupting Domantas Sabonis. So certainly, Tim Legler is not wrong. It is a recipe. I think there are teams that can do it. I think there is a way to still address that, and I think you've seen a little bit of that in recent games with Mike Brown going small. But I think it's going to come down to coaching and some rotations to try to combat that, and we'll just have to see how it kind of plays out in the playoff series.
Sean, on an incredibly lighter note, I saw yesterday you talked with Mason Jones, who has come up and been a huge impact on the Kings bench since he's been called up. What have you learned about him? What should Kings fans know about him? And just in terms of impact, what have you seen from Mason Jones's impact on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to think to hear an NBA head coach talk about a guy who hasn't even made his Kings debut yet, say that he's won them a game with just his energy.
Yeah.
I don't know that I was buying that, but certainly, I always argue, there's no analytic for chemistry on a team. And when you have somebody like him who's having this supremely positive effect with his teammates, he's got a little bit of familiarity with them, even prior to joining Sacramento. And even just having, being a late addition to Stockton and being able to maximize the opportunity once Keon Ellis is elevated from a two-way standpoint to a regular season to a regular roster contract. It provides opportunity, and he's an absolute spark plug, and he's going to be that Mateen Cleaves type of energizer bunny on the bench, first guy off there to make sure he's dapping up everybody and showing respect. And even in the locker room, he did what I think it was kind of funny right after the game last night. Here's a guy who didn't even play. He's obviously was dressed and ready to go, and he'll shower just like anybody else will. And as he's leaving his locker room spot to go into the back to hit the showers, he does that thing where you oftentimes will see kids or somebody at home when they get to the part of the door where there's that door jamb or whatever that is, that board above the door, and you kind of like dunk on it.
Oh yeah.
He did that, like going into the locker room, like going into the shower, like even that energy spread into the shower area. It was kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean, just learning about him, obviously he came in, I thought the interview was pretty insightful because he talks about his journey and how he had to kind of check his ego a little bit from coming from Arkansas and his first taste of the league, and then having to go and kind of grow up as a human being and as a man just overseas and kind of finding his identity a little bit. And it's one of the reasons why he bleaches his hair, because he found this love for soccer in Manchester United. So, kind of a fun interview. He's obviously had an effect, and even with his technical, Trey Lyles, he's had teammates like Trey Lyles who said that they would pay for his technical, and even Mike Brown shouted out pregame, said, "Come see me, I'll take care of it." And just a nice story, and I know he's hungry for an opportunity. So I know he wants to get out there and play, but if this is the role he has to play to kind of be that hype man, he's happy to do so.
Sean Cunningham, sports reporter for Fox 40. Sean, thank you so much as always. We will definitely talk to you soon, and maybe we'll get some more Giants talk once they get going, if they get off to the right foot.
I hope they get off to the right foot, but anytime, guys, anytime.